Wanna shake the ground, wanna break away, let loose. I'm tired of waiting, gotta make that move. All the neon signs, now they shout to me and you to write our story. Wanna shape the new. Do you wanna come along with me? Come along with me. Do you wanna? And we ain't got nothing, gotta do something, get it right. Gonna keep on running, grab the fun and live it light. And tomorrow's far away, should I let the party fade? And we ain't got nothing, gotta do something, let us all tonight. Got a restless mind, and now I won't let go. So let us be crazy before we get cold. You can take us out, your doubts won't hold us down, 'cause we're gonna light up the sky where we go. Oh, oh. Do you wanna come along with me? Come along with me. Do you wanna? And we ain't got nothing,
Yo.
Ooh.
Ooh, what's up? Howdy, Marco. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, Adam. How are you doing?
Good. Living the dream as always. I think your microphone couldn't handle the yo. Your audio like cut out right
Oh,
during
it's
the yo
cute.
that you did.
Okay.
So
You.
it's all good. It's all good. Welcome everyone. It is Saturday and we have another live stream.
Yep.
Marco is with us today. Marco Russo from SQL BI. If you are not familiar with SQL BI, definitely go check out their website. And they've got a ton of great content, articles. They put out some great books. Definitive Guide to DAX being kind of the showcase. DAX patterns as well. So many things. Plus their YouTube channel as well. So tons of videos going out there as well. So happy to have you, Marco. I'm glad you were able to join us today.
I'm so happy. I always watch Guy in a Cube on a Saturday when I'm not around. So this time I'm in the show.
We always appreciate you guys being in the chat as well. So that is always amazing. So if you didn't notice, Patrick's not here. He had some family stuff, so he's actually in Houston today. So he's like maybe an hour and a half south of me right now. But he was not able to be on the stream. So he will be back next week. If you are new to Guy in a Cube, either the live stream or just Guy in a Cube as a whole, put hashtag new in the chat. We always love seeing the new faces around here. It's always exciting to see just new folks getting involved and participating. I always love it. And then also shout out to our members of Guy in a Cube. We appreciate everything you do here. It helps us do what we do. And just a big thank you for that. If you want to learn more about being a member, you can go to the link on the screen or hit the join button down below to learn more. No commitment required. Just to thank you for checking it out and helping support us. If you see folks with a green name or the Guy in a Cube logo next to their name, those are members of Guy in a Cube. So shout out to all of you. And then also one of our members, Laura, happy birthday. Her birthday was a day or two ago. So just happy birthday. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you have a relaxing and fun weekend as a result as well. So if you want to, for all the members, you have access to the emotes for Guy in a Cube. Feel free to give her a bunch of pie charts if you'd like in celebration of her birthday. Instead of a birthday cake, we'll give you pie. That would be awesome. So, all right, let's see if there's any news out there. Keith says sort of new. Billy is new. Aluwadulapo is new. Rose is semi-new. Ola is new. Let's see here. We got all the birthdays. So welcome all new folks. Definitely love having you here. Thank you for spending your time with us. Is it the same Laura that was in the last Alberto video? Maybe, probably, I would imagine. Miguel Martinez is here. Is he? Where? I didn't see him. All right. Well, Miguel, if you're there, thank you, man, for being with us. It's always good to have you. Okay. What am I missing here? Questions. So get your questions ready. Please put Q: in front of it. Chatmaster C is standing by to get them queued up. We're having an open chat today, no members only chat. So members, get your questions in as well. We are prioritizing questions around real-time scenarios. So direct queries, streaming, push data sets, all of that amazing stuff. So Marco's going to share with us some information, and then we'll jump into the questions. And then please do not spam your questions. I know we had some things early on, but we have a 3 strikes rule here on Guy in a Cube. If you spam your question, you will get put in a timeout. Chatmaster C, as well as any of the other moderators, folks with the blue name and the wrench next to it, have the ability to put you in a timeout. So please do not spam. One time's all you need. It gets in the queue. We get to as many questions as we can. And then Marco, for you, as you're our guest, if you spot any question that you really like, just let me know and we'll bump that to the front of the queue.
And then I already see many going on.
Yeah, so. I know.
We'll see.
If you catch one though, let me know. And we'll go with that. And then super chats always take priority. So just if you do a super chat, make sure you put the question in there. Otherwise, you're just giving us money, which we do appreciate. But if your intention is to ask a question, be sure to write that question in there. All right. With all of that out of the way, Marco, over to you. What would you like to talk about?
So today, in order to introduce the topic for today, which is we want to talk about real-time updates in Power BI, and the obvious answer to real-time is direct query. But actually, direct query is just one of the options we have, and it's not always the best one. Especially, it's not always the right decision to move an entire project to direct query just because you have one or two dashboards or reports that have to be updated in real time or close to real time, right? Soft real time, whatever the name. So the idea, I want to just recap what is the architecture and what is one of the options we have with the push datasets, which is a solution that can be used with Power BI Pro without using Premium, which is interesting because there are other features like the streaming dataset that have been released now with the new version, which are just for the Premium version. And actually, they don't cover a scenario that I want to discuss during this small presentation. So can we go to the screen share so I can...
Yeah, you're not going to do the Patrick bit?
That's I don't see.
All right. There we go.
Okay, so let's start from here. So when we have a Power BI model, actually this is true especially for Power BI. We have two options in terms of data model we can create. We can create a model that has the import mode, which is I have to go back. I wanted to use the pen. Give me 1 second. So we usually have this scenario, which is we import data using the Vertipack engine. And what happens when we import data? We basically have to refresh the data every day, every hour, which means that we introduce a latency for the data so that we always see the data that are 1 hour late, 2 hours late, 1 day late, up to the delta time for the refresh. So the second option is direct query, which means that we have our report. Our report here generates a query, let's say in DAX, and this DAX query is executed by the DAX engine, which retrieves data from a storage engine. The storage engine can be the in-memory engine, Vertipack, we have seen before, and in this case you have the latency, or the DAX query is converted into one or more SQL query or the language that is used by the data source. It could be potentially could support also other languages other than SQL. Now, this is the scenario we have with direct query. But with this scenario, what is the problem? If you have 1,000 users and you have 1,000 DAX queries, guess how many queries we send to your data source? Now, if you are really interested into the real time, chances are that your SQL Server database, for example, is not designed just for the reporting, is a database that also receives transactions. So you are unlikely to have to want to have so many users connected at the same time to this database. So we have to think about the scalability of the solution. I understand that many people say, oh, I want to see the data as soon as they change, but actually this could create another problem. Just to mention, there is another option of direct query these days, which is the composite model or the direct query over Power BI datasets and analysis services. And in this case, we simply have a third option, which is this one, where we connect to another tabular model, which could have the same characteristics that we have here. So it's just another option. It doesn't change much the scenario. So I wanted to talk about push datasets because for the push datasets, we introduced a new tool, the PBI push tools, that I will show you in a demo in a moment. And the idea of the push datasets is that, what is a push dataset? The push dataset is just another kind of dataset that has all the options of a regular data, well, not all, almost all the options of the regular dataset, but it cannot be created using Power BI Desktop. It has to be created using the Power BI REST API. So there is a different API to create these models, but these models have the same features of a dataset. They can be used by a Power BI report. They can be used by Excel. They can be created in MDX, not just in DAX. And whenever there is a new update, a new row inserted into a table, if you created a dashboard with a tile connected to a report of Power BI, this dashboard is updated in real time, which means that you don't have to schedule a refresh. You don't have to say, oh, I want to refresh this page every hour, every 20 seconds, or every minute. It is just automatic, as I will show you in a moment. So let me go to the demo, and then I will go back to the slide so that I want to show you what is the meaning. When I say real time, what does it mean? This is a dashboard connected to a Contoso model that is stored in a push dataset. And I have a tool that simulates the writing in this push dataset of new data every 2 seconds. And you see that every 2 seconds, when there is something new, you see that the dashboard changes automatically. I don't have to do anything. As soon as there is new data inserted into the table, the dashboard is updated.
It's magic.
If you have, yeah, it's magic. Now, this could be interesting for those scenarios where you want to create, a monitor with a dashboard that is not interactive. It's just something that shows data that is, coming into your system, right? Sales, online sales, tweets, clicks on your YouTube video, whatever. Now, clearly, I used a technique to simulate this, but in the real world, we have to do something different. In the real world, we have this situation where we have to use this REST API here to push the new rows, which means that there should be an application, something, which, by the way, could be Power Automate, and I will show this in a minute, that has just to insert the new rows in the table that you want. Now, why the push dataset? The push dataset is interesting. Let's think for a moment to a classic solution, the regular Power BI desktop model that you create. Your Power BI dataset is a dataset that has a periodic refresh. So this is the Power BI dataset. It corresponds, for example, to your PBX file. You publish this file, and every hour, every day, you pull the data from your data warehouse, data mart, data lake, whatever, and you update the tables. Now, in theory, I know that this is not true in the real world many times, but in theory, your data source for your Power BI desktop file is not your SAP system, your ERP. The ERP is what we call the OLTP database, which receives the transactions from the orders, the online sales system, or whatever the sales system that you have. We'll talk about order, sales, receipts, something like payments. Okay. Now, if I can duplicate this model that I already created, because I already have my Contoso model that I created with this architecture, if I can create a copy of this model, and I can say, okay, I want to create a real-time version of this model where I want to reuse the same definition of tables, relationships, and measures that I already created in my model. What can I do? So the idea is that I have a tool that can do this for me. As I said, the API are different, so you cannot create a model in Power BI Desktop or in Tabular Editor and just publish it. But now we have a tool that allows us to get the BIM file and publish it. So it does the conversion between the different APIs, which means that now we have our Power BI file here and our push dataset here. And with the same tool, I can copy the data from one model to the other. Why should I do that? Because at the beginning of the day, I want just a copy of the data. I just want to start at 8 in the morning. I want a copy of the data that I processed during the night. This way, during the day, I can get the data straight from my application, my ERP, my whatever the system that creates this real-time data, my website, for example, and this layer should have something that I had to create that could be Power Automate, even though I don't think it's a good idea, but we will talk about this later, that just push the rows using the REST API. So basically you had to call one API to push the data and obtain what we have seen before. So in other words, the complete solution is midnight, I refresh my regular Contoso model. During the day, I push the new rows here just after the for example, the 8 in the morning, I do a first daily refresh so that my push dataset starts with the data updated until yesterday, and during the day, I receive the new rows. New day, everything starts from scratch again, which means that I could just ignore a few transactions like, I don't know, refunds or corrections of other transactions. I know these transactions will appear tomorrow. But during the day, I see 95% of the data that change over the day, and I still keep the ability to compare the new data with the historical data, which is what you will lose if you use the streaming dataset solution, which is basically an idea that you get everything real time, but you don't have a history of the data except what you pushed the day before. But this forces you to create a new model and to invest a lot of money, a lot of time in creating a new model. So this is the architectural point of view. The key part is understanding that I can create, so let me clear this. I want just to create this, okay. The key part is understanding that I can move from this model, which is the model I already have, I already created in Power BI, and I can create this model in just seconds, right? I don't have to create a new model. In seconds, I can inherit the existing model, and I can just push the data that I want within that model, the push dataset, that has a few limitations. I cannot copy the entire model with all the details, but I can copy just the subset of the data, the aggregation at the day level only for a few dimensions that I want in order to enable the comparison. What does it mean? Let me go back here. If you think about what we have in this dashboard, we have the 2-day revenues, which clearly is something that we want to have just for the day. But then we have the current month to date, which is just the sum of what we received today plus what we had since the beginning of the month. But then we have the comparison of whatever we made until today for this month with the equivalent sales for the previous month until the corresponding day of today. So, for example, we are at November 13th today, and I want to compare the first 13 days in October as a comparison, right? But in order to do that, I need to have at least 2 months of data in my push dataset. Otherwise, I'm not able to do this unless, yes, you can say, Marco, but you can create a composite model and you can use the push dataset. Sorry, you can use the regular dataset plus the push dataset, and you can put everything together. Well, yes and no, because when you do that, you have to use the composite model. There is some restriction in using the push dataset with the composite model today, but even though we lift them, the performance is not the same. And you will lose the ability to have the real-time updates. Because one thing that is important, this feature, I receive data and I see the numbers that change here in the dashboard. This feature is available only if you have a push dataset. If you create a composite model, you lose this feature.
In fairness, streaming dataset works there as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah. The streaming dataset works as well, but if I use the streaming dataset, it will be difficult to get this.
I agree.
To get this percentage. Right? So I just try to reduce at the minimum the 3 numbers that I cannot get with other architectures. Mm-hmm. Now, what I have to do this, let me just, and then I want to go to the Q&A because we have 2 articles with all the details about creating this solution. So I don't want to spend too much time. I just want to focus on 2 elements on this. So first, my starting point, I'm just finding the PBX file. My starting point is this. This is the Power BI file that has the Contoso model. This Contoso model is getting data from SQL Server. Once I have this, what should I do? Well, I have a tool. Well, first of all, I have to open this model with Tabular Editor, just because I need to save the model as a bin file. And the easiest way to obtain just to extract the model from Power BI is to open this with Tabular Editor and save the bin file. While you do that, you might want to do some change here, but assuming that the model is compatible, I can inherit all the tables, all the relationships, and all the measures. Once I have the bin file, I have to get this bin file and I have to publish it. How can I do that? I have to use, you see, I'm using this tool, Enter Push Dataset. This is the PowerShell version of the tool. There is also a command line version of the PBI push tools that you can find on the SQLBI.com website. And one of the commands that we have is the command that just get the bin file and publish it, right? So I'm not going to show you it because it would be just a waste of time. But basically, once you do that, you find that the same structure of tables and measures and so on, is also available in another data set. And then I have to push the data here, to push the data there. Now, just for the simulation, I'm using this tool, but the simulation is just a simulation. In the real world, you have to write some code, yes. Or you have to use Power Automate to do something similar. At the beginning of the day, you can just use this other command, which, as you see, gets a DAX file. What is this DAX file? I can show you because I have DAX Studio open somewhere. The DAX file I have has this content. It is connecting to the Contoso dataset that has the data updated every day, and it is retrieving just a few tables. I want to get the list of the stores. I want to get the date table. I just have to rename it to dates because otherwise date is a keyword that I cannot use. There's just a small detail. And I want to get the transactions that I have in sales grouped by store and date, because I cannot keep millions of rows in a push dataset, but I want to get just the minimum number of rows compatible with the cardinality I want to get for my dashboard in order to enable the comparison. Once I have the result of these three queries that you can see below here, so if I execute this code, probably no, now I'm not connected, but when I execute this code, I have three different queries with three different results. And what the tool is doing, the update push dataset simply clears the content of all these tables and write the content of these tables, reading the content from the regular dataset. And so this is my initial reset at the beginning of the day, and then during the day, I receive the data using, now I'm doing the simulation, but you get the point. So if I start this, oops, I used the wrong one, this one. If I use this, I have my new rows that are writing. Now, as I said, and the last thing I want to show you is that I have created a Power Automate. I just have to find a window. Give me 1 second. I have another version with Power Automate. Here we go. Which is just another, I don't know why this is here. Okay. It is just another Power BI report. So let's see if I can move the right position. When I click this button, I'm using a Power Automate automation. Now, this is in edit mode. Wait a minute. How can I go back? Okay, let's do.
Can hit reading view on that bar next to file.
Yeah, here we go. It should be already correct. Okay, so if I click this button, you see that it is triggering the writing of some data here, and you see that the number changed here, right? What am I doing here? So this is a no-code solution. People like the no-code solution. Let me show you what I did here. So here I have edit. I have this Power Automate solution, which is just a single transformation that calls the API to add rows to a dataset. Now, if you know how to create a Power Automate solution, you know that you could trigger this not by using a button in Power BI, but by using, for example, an event that you receive from somewhere, or you can just schedule this running every, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You cannot refresh a dataset every 2 minutes, right? But you can schedule a Power Automate flow that writes data every 2 minutes. Now, in this case, I'm writing always the same transaction, but of course you can bind these different content to variables or to other elements that you have in your Power Automate flow. So that's another solution you could have. So this is just to, I hope that it's not too confusing. I know that there is a lot of things, but the idea is that the advantage of using this approach is that I have a dashboard, but I still have a Power BI report that I can navigate. I have every feature in Power BI is still working, and I'm using the dataset that is updated in real time. Of course, the report is not updated in real time. I have to click refresh if I want to get the data that is refreshed. It is not updated in real time, but it is still updated more frequently than a regular dataset. And this entire solution, everything I described, doesn't need Power BI Premium. It is just working in Power BI Pro. Of course, it requires some effort, some coding effort or Power Automate effort. And as I said, the Power Automate effort is just something that could have a problem. With Power Automate, I'm worried that if you do something that executes something every 2 minutes, you are creating too much workload on your data source, which is the same problem I can expect with direct query if you have too many users creating, too many queries for your data, for your database. The push dataset doesn't have a problem in scalability. That's the big advantage of this solution. And I think that this is over for the demo, so we can go back to.
That's bananas, Marco. It's an interesting solution, and definitely I would say it's more on the advanced side of things in terms of getting it set up and understanding all the workings between those two. But it's definitely powerful in what you can accomplish there. So very cool. And I dropped links in the chat a little earlier to the 2 articles that you put out there, one on the implementation and then the other from Alberto talking about the concept, and that also has the video within it as well. So definitely go check those out for more details, as well as the link to download the push tools that Marco and Alberto put together. So excellent.
If I can ask, I would like to get questions about not just this solution, but also the alternative solution, because there are many analyses we could do in terms of scalability, workload, and latency that could be very interesting comparing the different solutions. So I look forward to receiving questions about all these.
We got a lot of questions. Good. So. And I guarantee you we are not going to get through all of them, but Marco, I will get all of the questions over to you so that you do have them. So cool. All right. So one thing we did was we did pose a question on the interwebs. We got one question out of that. We asked for questions and we got one back. So this was from FIFA. Is the push dataset the only alternative when you need to connect to REST APIs in direct query mode? And I think we need to debunk that a little bit.
The REST API, the REST API actually have the exposure of a few features of Power BI without requiring the other library, which is the tabular AMO for tabular. So tabular object model TOM. So there are libraries in .NET to do this. But if you don't use the XML endpoint and you just want to use Power BI Pro, then the REST API is the only tool that you have. Now, with the REST API, you can create a push dataset, true, but you can also publish a PBX file. What you cannot do with the REST API is to write data in a regular dataset. If you want to write individual rows in a dataset, the push dataset is the API that you have to use. You can refresh a table or a partition using the REST API, though, and you can also send a DAX query to any dataset, also regular datasets, using the REST API. This is a new feature. that has some limitation, but basically you can get your DAX query. You can send the DAX query through the REST API to any data set and retrieve the result. Also using a service principal account, which is very important for something that you want to schedule in an early batch or something like that.
Yes, not with an actual named user.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. So like I said, we got a ton of questions in the queue. Amit, thank you for the 2 super chats. Just shouting out love for SQL BI. So appreciate that. And then let's go. Wow. All right. Let's go back to the queue. Let's see what we got. Let's see here. Trying to find one of these. There are a lot of questions here. So I guess I'll start with Chris Finland. Had an interesting question for you, Marco. Is your nickname Dax Devil? I don't know.
No.
I don't know. Let's see here. Wow. All right. So Chris Jones. I took a look at the SQL BI push stuff. Cool for initial setup. Seems like the hardest bit is left undone, though. Setting up whatever automation actually does the data pushing. Did I miss that part?
No. The problem is the following. So that's a good question because it allows me to explain one point. How do you detect that there is some new data? That's the key point of the entire architecture. If you have to poll your data source every minute, I would suggest you to not use the push dataset. That's my point. Because the cost that you are creating, the overhead that you are creating over your data source is bigger than just using direct query if you have a small number of users. So you have to pay attention to this. When I talk about scalability, it's how many users we can handle with this technique. Now, let me explain how we use this solution in actual solution we implemented. If I have a website and I receive orders in the website, then there is an ERP that writes the data somewhere, but basically I know the moment you push order now or complete the payment, once we know that the payment is completed, we have a point where it's relatively easy to capture this event and to send this event to the Power BI API, sending the information about the transaction that you want to add to your push dataset. By doing this, you have 2 advantages. The first, the minimum latency. The second, no overhead in your architecture. Your production system is not affected by a workload of queries that are trying to get data just to update some report. Okay. Another idea could be that of using triggers on SQL Server when you have new rows added to a certain table. At that point, the trigger could just create data on some other table that you will use to update this. It's just to lower the workload. But
you got to be careful with triggers. Dangerous. Yeah.
Of course. If you have a middle tier that is managing that, it could be easy to capture that. Or you can analyze the transaction log of some diagnostic system to retrieve the data. The thing is, we don't have a standard solution to do that. What I suggest is to create the code to call the push dataset API in the point where it is less expensive to intercept the transaction. And this is different. It depends, right? Depends on, there are too many different. If you don't have any access, but you just have a database that changes continuously, then yes, you could create something in Power Automate that every minute, you run a query and you see the result of the query and you decide what are the new rows to add to the push dataset. But in my opinion, it's not a good idea, because if you do that, you are increasing the cost of the workload of the queries running over your SQL Server. It could be a very bad idea. Think about that. We're trying to do something to lower, to increase the scalability and lower the workload over the data source, because direct query is too expensive for for a large number of users. If you end up creating something that is more expensive, you're not doing a good choice. At that point, it's better to use direct query.
Love it. Yep. All right. Evan's got a question here. How would you use the new streaming data flows feature, and will it replace push data sets? Ooh, that's a good question.
So the new streaming data flows has another goal, which is we want to analyze data that is generated as a streaming, right? The goal for the push dataset, or at least the goal for the push dataset at the beginning was similar. The goal of the solution that I described leveraging the push dataset is to manage those scenarios where you want to get part of the data that come in real time, but you want to compare this data with the historical dataset that you already have. The streaming dataset doesn't have any tool to manage that. And the streaming dataset, if I remember well, the streaming dataset has several limitations for the model you can create, the relationship that you can create, and you don't have a development tool to manage that. Today, we can leverage tabular editor and the DAX code we have for the push dataset. For the streaming dataset, you have to use a UI that, as of today, doesn't expose any API to do that, except at the part where you push the data. So it's for another kind of scenarios where you have, for example, you're analyzing tweets, you're analyzing clicks on your website, you're analyzing IoT, all right? So, for financial data that you have updated during the day, and you want to get the comparison with the previous year, I don't know. I don't think that it is, as of today, with the current features, is not a good solution for that. And I don't see how you can.
So I would say maybe, because on the streaming data flow side, like we can take advantage of like streaming analytics and event hubs, and that could potentially push to the historical piece. It's not on the Power BI side though. It has to happen before it gets to Power BI. So.
And I think it's premium only.
I believe so. And then Miguel Martinez commented, and he would know a lot of limitations from when he was the PM.
Hi, Miguel.
Yeah, Miguel's there. So he was the PM for this feature when he was at Microsoft. So
maybe that in 3 years we would say a different story, right? When we have a version 3 of the new streaming dataset, it's different. But
3
as
years,
of today,
that's so far from now. 3 years.
I'm just saying. I don't think that something would change in 6 months, right? So
I don't know.
Okay. Let's see.
All right. Let's see here. Trying to weed through these. So Jonathan had one where I'd like to create some real-time Power BI data sets. I have SharePoint, Excel, Teams, Power Apps, Office 365. What's a good solution to do that? I mean,
so if you have these, so if you're saying that these are your data sources, right? What you have is in reality this situation. You have a data source that is not a relational database, so it's not possible to use a direct query over a SharePoint list directly, but you could have something that copy the data from your list or Excel files or whatever to something that is enabled for direct query, right? You have, I don't know, the data flow probably, you have something that can do this. Performance could be not the same, of course. If you want to use the push datasets architecture we have seen, your problem becomes that you have to intercept the changes applied to these data sources and convert them into new transactions for the data model. There is some work to do. I mean, the push dataset is not free. I'm just saying that it is not so expensive as someone could imagine. That's my point. Many, many times I have seen, come on, we can implement this way. And yes, of course, we need a developer to call the API. But guess what? We don't need 3 months of work. We need 1 week of work to implement that part of the architecture. That's my point. It's just an analysis of the cost and return of the investment. That's my point.
Yeah. All right. Good. So Thomas has a question. So on the solution that you did, can that only be used on top of a single data source, or can we mix data sources?
The push dataset doesn't have any data source because the push dataset only receives data that you push.
It's the REST API, right? That's how you're feeding
exactly. Which means that when I do, so let's say that I started Contoso from a data model that had 5 different data sources. Fine. When I do the daily reset, I just copy the data from a dataset using DAX queries to the push dataset, just to create the initial population of the tables, just to have the historical data. And once I complete this stage, I have to push the new rows. How? I don't know. It depends on your architecture. But if you need to get data from 2 of the 5 data sources that you have, you need 2 different systems that capture this transaction and push the rows into the same push dataset. You can call. Actually, I have another solution where we call from different systems. We push the data into the same push dataset, even though we're getting data from 2 different systems.
And then obviously your base data set can obviously pull data from various data sources as well. So
yes.
So that's fine. So yeah, I would think that would work.
One thing that we don't have today is the ability to use to consume the push dataset from a composite model. So if I create a composite model and I want to connect to the push dataset, it doesn't work, even though I don't think there is a single reason to justify that it should not work. So
right.
I think Microsoft should support it. I don't know why it is not supported today.
Marco, ideas.powerbi.com.
I know.
All right. Ravo had a question. Can I use the Power BI REST API for push data sets if I want to get data from a Linux-based application? So kind of ties in with the last one. I would, yes, 100% yes. I mean, it's a REST API, so it's platform agnostic. So.
I think it is not clear. It's a REST API. You can call this API, but it's a push API.
Yes.
You have to push the data.
Yes.
You're not pulling data from Linux.
Right.
You need Linux to push data to Power BI. It's different, right?
Or an intermediary that gets the data from the Linux application and calls that push API as well. So yeah, you could run that on a Linux machine. That's fine if you want to code it that way.
I have an important detail here. The entire source code of the libraries we used is in C# in .NET Core.
Ooh.
So you can
run that
use
on
the
Linux.
same library on Linux. So if you want to use the library, you have to write code to retrieve the data from your, I don't know what, system in Linux. But the part that interface to the Power BI REST API is actually source code that you can reuse as is. No problem.
Yep. With code, anything is possible.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So Mark's got a question here. Do you ever cut off the original model and just depend on the daily push version, or do they always work together each day?
That's a good question because it allows me to describe a couple of things that, of course, I skipped because there are many details that. The push dataset has a limitation in the number of rows that you can store in the tables, the number of rows that you can push over a certain amount of time. So we reduced the granularity of the push dataset, removing the detail of customer and products. For example, we have Contoso that has customer, product, stores, and date. In the push dataset, we don't have the detail of the customer and we don't have the detail of the product because we wanted to get the detail at the day level and at the store level.
Right.
And for the size of the Contoso database we used, we would have gone out of the boundaries of the limits. If we wanted to keep, for example, the product, we might have said, okay, we can keep the detail for the history at the month level, not at the day level, so that by reducing of one order of magnitude the granularity for the day, we could have had more space available for the products. Maybe not the product key, the SKU, but the product category, for example. So there are choices that you have to make, which means that you cannot think to, oh, I use just the push dataset. Also because the push dataset has this limitation, because technically it is actually using direct query internally. So but it is used direct query over a local storage, which is not shared with other systems. So you don't have to worry about, oh, my direct query is slowing down some other user. It's not a concern, because there are no other users other than the Power BI users.
Yep. Cool. All right. So Miguel had a question here. I like his question. Do you think the upcoming hybrid tables will change what you recommend on this somehow?
Yeah. Yes and no. So first, hybrid tables are a new feature that has not been released yet, but has been already announced at Microsoft Ignite. There are a couple of sessions where you can see demos of this feature. The idea is basically this. Imagine you have the incremental update in Power BI, and you say, I want to also have the last day available in direct query mode. So what does it mean? You have all the data imported in memory, but the current day is not imported at all. And every single time you run any query over your model and you included the date of today in the query, then a SQL query has to be sent to the data source, which guarantees that you have data that is up to date. Limitations, two limitations. First, you don't have the behavior that you don't see the dashboard updated in real time. It is not possible because there is no event for a new update. It is always you. You have to ask for a refresh. And the second problem is the scalability of the solution. It works for one user. If you have 1,000 users and every user is continuously clicking update, update, update because they want to see new data, you are creating a huge amount of workload for your SQL Server database. If the solution at that point is, oh, I can create another database just for these queries, I raise my hand and say, wait a minute. Try to evaluate whether it is more expensive to duplicate your SQL Server database or to use this solution, which is, this solution is very cheap. I'm not saying it's not perfect, but it's not expensive.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Well, and also with that, like, test and validate it too, because it may be that, the hybrid table thing actually ends up performing fine and meets your needs and SLAs, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm saying it is again, having more tools is good. Pretending that I need a tool that I will use for everything is usually a bad idea, because that tool could work very well in one scenario and it could be not the ideal thing for another. The reason why I wanted to highlight the advantages of the push datasets is that the reason why they never took off, in my opinion, is because of the lack of the tools to shorten the development effort required. Once you reduce this, the cost of this implementation is small enough to be affordable in many situations. It's not cheap. It's not completely free. I'm the first one, but in the long term, once you start to pay for the CPU and the memory and the instance, every time you create a duplicated database or a replica or whatever, you have to pay for that. It's not free. So think about it.
There's always a cost. It's just a question of where you want to pay it. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to Rishi. Had a good question. Do people still really use dashboards? I would have thought the streaming link to update Power BI goals with Power Automate alerts would be more useful to monitor KPIs in real time. I'll give you my take, and then Marco can comment on it. I will say, from my customer interactions and what I've seen in the wild, dashboards aren't heavily used. They're actually very rare to see. And in fact, most people, they refer to Power BI dashboards. I immediately assume that they're referring to a report, not the actual dashboard content type inside of Power BI. I've been mistaken on that twice, ever. So
I would say the same, but there are two things to consider. As of today, the Power BI dashboard is the simplest way you can aggregate in a single page data coming from different data sets. Yes, today we can use a composite model and we can create a report with a composite model getting data from different data sets. But it's not easy to consolidate data coming from different data sets with a composite model in many circumstances. So it could be something you could do, but is usually the cost for creating a consistent composite model just for that report, just 3 or 4 tiles with different numbers, it could be too expensive. The Microsoft Goals is another technique to use that, but to be honest, the Microsoft Goals is very good in doing something that is not possible with any other tool, which is I want to monitor these KPIs and I want to track the trend. I want to create a history of this data that in the meantime they change, and I will lose this change over time. So it's a different. The goal feature creates a new data set in Power BI that you can use. So it's very interesting, but it's yet another tool for another thing. The advantage of the dashboard is it is a very good solution for those scenarios where you just want to create a kiosk that displays data to people going through. Not something that you have to interact with, I agree. But just to show something that, they stay in the background and in a monitor in the whole of company is wonderful.
Yep.
But again, it's not a solution for everything, I agree.
Yeah. And I will say that I love Power BI Goals. I think it's
very good.
It's very good, and just the updates that are coming out for it to improve it, based on customer feedback, have been outstanding. So if you haven't checked out Power BI Goals, definitely go check that out. All right. Thomas Schmidt had one. If the goal was to refresh closing stock prices integrated into DAX calculations, at the end of the day, would Power Automate be enough versus having to use the push dataset approach?
The problem of this question is that push datasets are intended to just insert new rows, whereas you probably want to change the value of a stock price. Yes, you could create the new row with a new price with a new time. Right. And you could have a DAX calculation that gets the last max price. Well, if you can afford having a refresh every 10 minutes, I mean, if the latency of 10 minutes is good enough for you, or in other words, if you know that you are not updating the prices every minute, but you're updating the prices every 10 or 15 minutes, so that you could afford having a system that, for example, with Power Automate, you can trigger a refresh of a table in a model, just a table. So at that point, what you could do, you just write the new prices in a table that has only the prices for the current day, and you refresh that table only. Much better, much better. I would like to use this question also for another detail, which is the push datasets are not intended to replace anything. The push datasets that I described are intended to empower an existing dataset, adding real-time features to a few reports that could benefit from them without converting the entire architecture into direct query. This is the way you have to look at it, right? You're not in this situation, use another tool. We said there are many other tools. There's direct query, there is REST API for refreshing tables, partitions. No, just tables, not partitions.
Yep. All right, cool. Let's see here. So Paw Eater had one. Why would you need to do the initial load more than once?
Well, I can describe the example of a system we have in production. We have to collect new events, and we decided to do what was less expensive, new orders. We don't process refunds. We don't process corrections of previous transactions. We don't process changes of the invoice where a product was not coded in the right way. What does it mean? Whatever I show you for today is subject to some correction tomorrow. Whatever I show you for the history is what we computed until midnight for the history. If there is a correction today for something that happened 2 or 3 days ago, you will see it tomorrow. For the purpose of the dashboard that was showing in the whole of the CFO, the cash flow of the company, it's good enough. We don't need that level of detail.
Yep. All right. Clear out that one. Let's see here. So Chris had a question about, he heard Microsoft is partnering with Grafana. Will this have any push dataset impact going forward? I doubt it.
I have no idea.
I doubt it. Maybe, but I doubt it. The reason I said, so the latest solution of the streaming data flows, I would imagine that the investments would go towards that and not necessarily push data sets, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think so, but.
All right. So let's see here. Santosh. I have some manual mapping files which are maintained in Google Sheets. Can I maintain that in a push data set? It would eliminate the manual refresh.
No, because as I said, you can only write new rows. So if I want to change the value I see in a particular report, what I have to do is I have to write a compensating transaction. For example, imagine if you wrote 1,000 for the budget for 2021. Then instead of 1,000, you want to write 500. Well, I have to send another transaction with minus 500 so that the sum of the two will be 500. It's more complex than just using direct query. So direct query is the right thing to do. Of course, if you have the Google worksheet in that case, I don't think that direct query is a solution. You just have to increase the frequency of the refresh that you have to do. But for example, in Power Automate, you can write the same button that I wrote in Power Automate. You can write a button that just hit the refresh of the data set once you completed the update of your Google worksheet. Right. You just have to click a button and refresh. So
yeah. Yep. All right. Jared has an interesting question. I was trying to think of some while you were talking, but I can't. Are there any non-operational use cases for real time? Everything I'm thinking is operational.
Dude. Well, okay, let me answer to another way. None of the demos I shown you today, none of the examples I show you today are meant to be used for something serious. I mean, who needs to show in the whole of a headquarter a monitor with numbers that move forward, showing the real-time updates of, come on. It's just a vanity project, right? My point is that I have seen too many times that this small requirement was hijacking the entire architecture of a solution that was intended to do something else. Mm-hmm. So my proposal is that if you hit this kind of requirement, you could just manage these requirements with a tactical solution, low cost, that make people happy, rather than, oh no, we have to use direct query for everything because the CFO wants to see the data in real time. Come on. So that's, reality check. If you need good data quality, you need everything. You need ETL, you need control, you need validation, you need test, you need Q&A, you need everything.
Yeah. The one situation where I'm thinking like real time is absolutely needed. Is it's absolutely operational. Thinking about like if it's some company that you're monitoring something and you need to know is it up or
Yeah.
down, like that's the real time situation.
But in that case, the streaming dataset is a good solution.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because in that case, you want to reduce the latency and you want to get the data as close as the real time as possible. In that case, that is the right architecture. I'm just saying that.
Well, some of it also is though is how do you integrate that with other data if that's your requirement too? Like, so if you're trying to do that and you need to integrate the data from the streaming data set as well as other maybe historical data, like how do we actually go about doing that? So that's a potential thing that you need to work out. Although in this scenario, I'm thinking in my head, this is like almost like a war room where you've got multiple monitors. Think of like the Microsoft like cybersecurity team where they've got the big monitoring, all the different monitors everywhere, and like you could have different stuff up there and handle that. So I don't know. And I was actually at a company where they had that in the basement for what they were doing, and I will say that was one of the nerdiest things I've ever seen, and I loved it. That was amazing.
Yeah, but I have to say, I mean, if you need real time is hard.
Yes.
The money spent by company that have to implement real time. Think about the companies that are in the stock exchange market. They have to do risk assessment in real time. You have no idea about the complexity that exists for those systems.
Oh.
Their development cost is huge.
Oh yeah.
And they don't rely on these architectures at all because these architectures are just too slow to accomplish their requirements that are in milliseconds.
Well, I'm thinking like so NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. I was actually when I was in support, like that came up of how they were actually doing that and what they were needing to accomplish certain things, and that was insane. Like that was.
I know.
You're not using push data sets for that.
No.
And then the other thing, like if you think of like oil and gas companies where they're doing like well monitoring and operations on that, like that's some serious development that goes into those systems. So, all right, we are over time. Marco, any final words of wisdom?
Well, I hope that you will get this hour as an input to think about. Did we evaluate all the possible solutions? So just don't choose a single architecture for your entire system. Sometimes it's not a good idea. Sometimes you can just combine different systems together. Hybrid tables could be the right solution for many situations. Direct query could be a good solution for a subset of the data, not the entire solution created in direct query. My experience is that too many times I have seen companies choosing direct query for the entire model when just a subset of the tables were subject to that requirement. We have composite models today. And so the push dataset is just another tool that you have in your tool belt that you can evaluate. Sometimes it could be a good idea. Some other times it is not necessarily the best idea. Agreed.
All right, Marco, thank you so much for joining us. Always happy to have you. And then folks, go check out SQLBI.com if you want the details on how to implement this and to go get the download for those push tools. All right, we will see everyone next Saturday and out on the interwebs.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.